Hello everybody and welcome to LMM. And it's now time for another episode of Lawrie Goes Loco. Today we are at a very, very special railway, one which I am truly honoured to get an invite to, and partly it's all thanks to you guys watching and helping the channel grow. I never thought we'd get to this place because this is basically the mecca of heritage railways. The railway came here in 1865, and unusually for a narrow gauge railway, it was built to hold passengers as well as freight. And in fact, as time went on, the freight traffic dwindled to the point that this was a passenger carrying railway. In 1950 though, the railway had run its course and its owner wanted to sell up and planned to close down this railway. And this is where things happened and things changed, which would change the face of preservation forevermore. In 1950, a group of men and women came together to save the Talyllyn railway, making it the first preserved railway in the entire world. And it is true to say that without their efforts, both the Talyllyn would have been lost, and that most of modern preservation that you and I take for granted probably wouldn't have happened without these forefront people going, I've got a really good idea. Nothing else would have followed, because back in 1950, this was a mental concept that volunteers and people who weren't trained in the railway could take over and operate an actual railway. So we all owe them a massive debt of gratitude. The Talyllyn itself stands out because it is one of the few railways that has not had a break in its operation. The railway was open for its season in 1951 and has continuously operated since its construction to present day. And very, very few other railways can actually hold that distinction, especially those in preservation. There's lots of railways that have long histories and they've been reopened and they continue to run. But there has been a break where the railway closed and then was reopened. The Talyllyn almost unique in that. So today we're going to look at one of the engines which helps keep this railway going. Of all the engines that you've heard of on the Talyllyn railway, you've probably not heard of this one. This is Alf, and she is a Hunslet, built in 1950. In fact, she is number 4136 of 1950, and she is built as a 65 horsepower flame-proof locomotive. This is basically Hunslet's standard underground design locomotive, designed to work in mines where flames are generally a bad thing. So this bit here wasn't normally that. That used to run underneath the locomotive and go through many flame-proofing magic devices to just stop any possible sparks, to stop any risk of fire or general bad times. And so that's the other fun thing about this thing is it moves. So as you're going along, you kind of have exhaust coming in different directions. It's like a sprinkler, but only for exhaust. Not an original part of the design. This thing is one hell of a lump, and she weighs 10 tons, which means this thing here, despite its rather compact size, is heavier than my own full-size Ruston 48. And if there's one thing that this really emanates, it's power. This looks like it will turn the earth. I don't think I've ever seen another narrow gauge locomotive that quite has the proportions of this that you go, yeah, that's going to shift stuff. Apart from possibly the Garretts on the Welsh Highland that you go, is that really the right gauge for them? This thing looks massive, and she was built originally for the National Coal Board at Hetton Colliery, which is somewhere near Burnley. And she arrived there and worked there underground with another locomotive. I think that was number 4135, and that locomotive is here as well, although in a rather less assembled state. And the two of them were built as a pair. There's somewhere on the front here, there's the marks where there would have been the connectors that run through, and so you'd be able to control both engines from one cab. There's some other things when we look here, like this grille over the front of the radiator, just reinforcing that very heavy-duty industrial feel, and of course a very stereotypical headlight because mines are dark and lights are important. The locomotive is covered with all these fins and grills all over it, which give it this really industrial feel. In fact, I think it might be the most industrial-looking locomotive, the most purposeful thing that I've ever looked at on the channel. It's a mechanical drive locomotive, and the drive comes down to this absolutely massive counterweight down here, and then via the rods to the wheels. It also has possibly the greatest overhang of any locomotive I've looked at. It's ridiculous. The wheels are here, and I've got the frames that go all the way here out of shot. There is about the distance between the driving wheels tacked on at the front and the back of this thing. It looks almost comical with it, and you can kind of imagine if you ever asked it to go around a tight bend, that it would, well, it would go around, but anything coupled up to it would be flung off the line. It's a weird shape of thing. The other thing, of course, to note it is just how heavily dutifully it's built. The frames on this are just they're like that. It is just made of thick, heavy stuff designed to give it a bit more weight, a bit more adhesion, and also so that, you know, in the next 1 million years, it will still be sat here because it's just got that much material for rock to get through. Now, one of the things you might notice about this is, compared to everything else you see on the Talyllyn, it's in somewhat shabby condition. One could even go as far as work weary. And that isn't through a lack of love or anything, it's just the fact that it's always in use, always doing something, and also it lives outside. It's unlike the steam engines, which are all stored undercover and looked after, this thing is ready at a moment's notice at any point in time from the siding it lives in. And there are a couple of pieces now which are starting to look like they'll need a bit of attention. But it does still go. So let's have a look at the power plant of this mighty, mighty little thing. So behind here we have the power plant, which is a Gardner 4LW, and this is about 5.6 litres worth of four-cylinder action, which generates many, many torques. I can't find a figure for it, but they're pretty sure it will pull basically everything at the railway, which is quite cool. I mean, the lump itself weighs just about half a tonne, just for the engine itself, which is quite a sizable and substantial piece of metal with some rather serious pulling potential. And of course, this is a fairly familiar engine because we got a Gardner in the Ruston 165 that I featured way back on the channel. So it's just a slightly smaller and less cylindery version of that. But yeah, it's all similar. You've got your little primers across here and the rack control there. That's all bits that I recognise. On this side, we have the air intakes up here, and then coming down here, attached to the manifold here, these are the flame-proof devices, which do something magical to make sure there can't be any sparks. Also on this side, we've got the air pump, which generates the air, because this is an air brake locomotive, and also it has air brakes to work the stock here. So that's quite a sizable thing. And there's also various puddles from its life outside, giving a bit more of its hard-worked impression on it. So when it arrived here, the locomotive had a couple of adjustments. Originally, it was fitted with your traditional centre-mounted coupling system, but obviously, working on the Talyllyn, they work with buffers, being one of the only railway I can count being Corris, that actually has buffers and a central drawbar on the narrow gauge. So of course the question is, why Alf? Because with names like Talyllyn and Dolgok and Sir Hayden, it's a bit of a shortened and different name. The answer is quite simple, really. The engine was named after the then chairman of the National Coal Board, the engine's former owners, who was Alf Robins. That's all there is to it. It's quite a nice little throwback to the guy who was in charge and helped to allow these engines to come to their new home here at Talyllyn, where basically they have been ever since, with the other one being a kit of parts. This one has basically been used for everything on the railway. It's the go-to engine if anything needs to be moved, any P-way needs to be done, or anything. It's just anything that isn't passenger services, because it's not a passenger locomotive. It will be a rescue engine. It's gone and rescued pretty much everything when it's broken. And basically, because it will move everything, there is no doubt whatsoever, if you send this to pick up a load, it will move it, which makes it an ideal rescue locomotive. And of course, the lack of a cab, when it was designed, it's designed to work underground. And generally underground, it doesn't rain that much, so you don't need a cab. And being part of the locomotive's height, well, we didn't need it, did we? So the cab would have made the Loco higher or rather restricted your visibility, so it never had one. So being here in not so much sunny Wales, that's the biggest drawback. So that said, let's go and have a look inside the cab. So here I am on board. I'm not going to call it a cab because there's a lack of. I'm going to go with my new favourite term, which is the flight deck. Welcome to the flight deck of the Hunslet. Now, the first thing to take from this is I am actually sitting too high. This seat has been raised. And this is also made of a rather charming, uncushioned, blank wood, which I'm sure is going to be exceptionally comfortable when we go on the run. It has some back support and enough for me to be able to lean back out of the locomotive. We've also got the light mounted down here looking that way, which is useful for illumination. And also it's quite nice for footrests down here. I'm pretty sure this footwell down here will fill up with water if it starts raining and I'll have a paddling pool. So talking through the controls, down here we've got the handbrake, which is held on a latch. And then we go on to this side where things get a bit more complicated. This thing in the middle is a gear selector. It's also got a brake on it, so when you push that down, it will spin. It will stop the clutch from spinning, which means that I can use this, the reverser, to select either forward or reverse gears. And then once I've got a gear, I can bring it down, select a gear, and gently bring it up, which is my clutch. If you do that, you will fly off at a rate of knots and everybody will laugh, and it will be generally unpleasant because it will not stall, it will just launch. So lots of control. The hardest thing with this is it's sprung, and as the teeth are turning, they are just straight gears. When you do that and break it, the teeth may not be in the right position, so you'll sit there trying to get it in and fail. So you have to attempt several times. Apparently it can sometimes just go in, and sometimes you'll be trying like 10, 12, many more times, swearing at the beast. Moving across here, this here is the throttle, which will make a lovely noise. And here we have the brake. It's air brake, so we've got the gauge up here. By applying that, the brake goes on, which is good. And you can see the linkage in the cab moving as we do that. We've got a whistle here, which makes better noise when we've got more air. The engine stop here. And there's the kind of implication that there may have once upon a time been some gauges here. Up here, this is the oil pressure. We have the engine counter there. That shows us our main air reservoir. This one was an ammeter, and that one was a speedo, and that was a charging port. So you can plug things in, probably not USB though for charging your phone. The other thing's got a key here, which is quite useful for starting it, and then sander down here for the forward, and then sander down here for reverse. Two separate sanders, they're not linked together. And then up here we have a decompressor. The locomotive was originally an air start locomotive, which meant you'd use the decompressor to stop any compression, so you could spin the engine up, slam that over, and hopefully with enough momentum and enough speed, the thing would fire up into life. I've had to go at air start, and it's strange. And having an electric start on a key, that's a lot easier. So with that done, let's go through the prep and get this thing ready to go. This locomotive was designed for people who might necessarily not care about the locomotive's welfare, so things have been kept rather simple and made so it's going to be quite hard wearing. First of all, we've got these greasing points there, there and there on the coupling rods, and that's been done for me this morning, so I don't need to do it. They wouldn't trust me with the big grease gun thing. Sweet, so that's done, we don't need to do that. Then we move on to the engine. We've got a tiny little dipstick here where we confirm that there is indeed wet and black stuff on it. That there is. So we can put that back in. We have to prepare it for a cold start. So let's push this little knob here in, and that releases the rack, and we just make sure that's done its full travel. That's now put it into super open mode to allow as much fuel in as possible to help it start. Job done. Shut that back up. The next thing we can do is hop back up here and look in this red thing here, which is where we have diesel, which is apparently that's just a lift, not a screw. There's a very difficult way of checking the diesel here. It's very technical and only some people can do it. Yep, I can see diesel. Moving across this way, the engine, we have a very advanced lid here where we can look in and see the same technique. Yes, there is water, therefore we have coolant. Pull the bolt back, shut that. That's that done. Hop down safely and walk around to this side. Opening up this bit here, we can look and check in here to have a look at the belt to make sure that's still tight and not likely to fail on us, because if we lose air, there's big problems. Having done that, we've got, again, the grease points on the wheels down here to do, and then we go to the cab. The cab has a little pot here. We fill these 4 little chambers up, and that feeds the axle boxes. And that is about it. So, now, with all that done, we can fire this up and take it out. And they've told me they've got me an appropriate, authentic train for this to take out, something that will really tax it. What's that? Oh, we've got the vintage coaches. They weigh almost as much as this. That's going to be really weird. Oh, well, let's fire it up. And what it is to do is turn this key, and apparently away we'll go. Oh, that's good flag. So, click on. Touch down. Oh. Right, this thing is quite noisy, so let's see what it's like though. First, we have to push this lever down. We're in 4th gear. Bring it. Try again. There we go. That's gone in 2nd time. Release the brake, and slowly we bring this up. Last on the whistle. Slowly. Hear it engaging. Hear the engine take up the... That is a glorious noise. So now we're moving. The next thing to do, obviously, is to see what will happen until we give it a bit of throttle. That's a rather intoxicating noise. Now, we're going to keep this relatively slowly because otherwise you won't be able to hear a single thing I say, but I think the first and most important thing we do with this is go full throttle. Wow! That is absolutely fantastic. That is such a brilliant noise. It's so agricultural, but shows so much power. Wow, that's incredible. So obviously there's a lot of noise you can hear on here. There's some of the gears in the transmission you can hear whining. Apparently it's just the noise that it makes, but don't really worry about that. It's part of its character. Now the cab this evening is quite a pleasant place to be. Amazingly, it's not raining. The sun is slowly going down as we finish our day. And it's starting to get chilly. But basically, this is a summer-only engine because I can imagine very little more grim than sat on this in the rain as the footwell beneath me starts to fill with water and you have a paddling pool. And that would be, yeah, unpleasant. Deeply unpleasant. As for comfort, well, I'm sitting on a bench overhanging the wheels by some distance. And it is surprisingly comfortable. It rides surprisingly well. I feel that you could sit here for, at least 10 minutes before your bum goes to sleep. In all seriousness, it's actually a lot more comfortable than I was envisioning. It's quite pleasant. The most unpleasant thing about the whole thing is the throttle is spring-loaded. If I let go, the throttle just releases. So you've got to keep constant pressure on it. And that's the worst thing, because your hand's constantly working, pushing down on it. But it's not a huge thing, and it's quite a nice safety measure of, oh no, I'm unconscious. It's at least slowing down, it's not a full throttle. That noise is amazing. So visibility looking forwards is pretty abysmal. I'm in the raised seat position. The seat's been raised up to improve visibility because as a mine locomotive, originally my head would have been kind of in line with this so it would fit down a tunnel. It's possibly the worst visibility of any narrow gauge engine I've driven, just because there is this humongous engine stretching out in front of me. And I kind of lose visibility. Well, we're coming up to a curve and I can see nothing around the curve. But if I do this, I can kind of see, but there is a lot of dead space over there. So we're going to see what happens now if we apply the brakes. So throttle down, out of gear, and apply the brakes. It stops. That was a very light brake application, and we stopped dead. That's impressive. Guard says we can continue. Straight into gear, and away we go. There's about a 50% chance of this actually engaging because the gears, they're straight cut gears, so they've got to engage. So there's a brake on that stops everything turning. If you're lucky, they're in the right position. If not, spin a little ball, try again. My record so far when doing this video is 4 attempts. So far, going in first time, that's good. With that noise of that marvellous exhaust and the fact that it just pulls away, we've got about 12 tonnes behind us. We've got very much the wrong train today. These are the vintage coaches and it looks very amusing, this very, very industrial mine engine with gorgeously restored vintage coaches. But it's like they're not there. It does not care at all. It's just like, yeah, I'm happy, carry on. It gives such a sense of power, it's unreal. In fact, I don't think I've driven anything else on the narrow gauge which really, A, has this kind of noise, or just gives such a hulking presence and sense of, I'll tear up the track if you want, just put a hook around it and I'll just walk off. Listen to that though as we go through there, that is magnificent. Some downside, the max speed of this is the same as my own Ruston 48, 9 miles an hour. This railway is 7 miles long, which means it will take you about an hour to go from one end to the other. Which on an evening like this is fine, listening to that noise. When it's raining and you just want to get back, that's a very slow speed and takes a very long time. That noise is phenomenal. It is, without doubt, the loudest, most industrial, most beast-like locomotive I've ever driven, and I am loving every second of it. Whether or not you can hear anything on this review, I have no idea. But know this, I love it. I love it for that noise alone. I don't care anything else. It could make that noise and pull one wagon and that's it. And I'd still think this is the best thing ever. And frankly, we are travelling along the Talyllyn, through the Welsh mountains, the sun is setting, everything is in daylight, in the golden hour. And it is magical. It feels like totally the wrong engine to be doing this in, which makes it all the more enjoyable. Of course, this is the railway's workhorse. This does so much of their P-way shunting and just whenever they need it to fire up and drag something, this is what they call on. It basically is the thing that keeps the Talyllyn going. And it's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I have been told that we're in second gear now, and that's this big. You can put it in first, but there is absolutely no point unless you're trying to actually move the earth, in which case it will move the earth. But whatever you do, don't try and go from first to second, because it won't like it at all. Even the guys who drive it all the time go, I wouldn't bother. This is absolutely glorious. I mean, it's one of those engines that the sensation of driving is fantastic. Would I want to drive it day in and day out? No, you get very wet and that noise would become very loud very quickly, as with the transmission noise. It's not without its faults. But for a one-off sensation, oh, it's wonderful. It might not be the smoothest thing, like every time I do that, the coaches lurch. So, through there, it's magnificent. Certainly, there are people, I'm sure, that can drive this with a lot of finesse. And if I put my mind to it, I can slowly put the power down and really enjoy it, because the throttle is fantastic. It's so controllable. But the noise is so intoxicating. All you want to do is go! And so, I would have this. I would have this every day of the year just to make noise. Because that's what it is. It's a smile machine. It's a massive smile machine. I love it. So guys, that's it for this review on possibly the best sounding diesel that I have ever had the pleasure to drive. I would go many, many places on this, then stop, then open it up again, then stop and open it up just to hear that roar, because that's easily the best thing about it. It is a fantastic sounding machine. And for the volunteers here at the Talyllyn Railway and for the staff, this is an essential workhorse. It does everything. And it is one of the things that it is now coming up to its turn in the restoration crew. It needs a bit of work here and there and a bit of a spruce up, and that is one of the railway's next priorities, is to make this look stunning and as you would expect for the Talyllyn Railway. And of course, I think it's fantastic, as long as they don't change the sound on it, because the sound is just mega. And yeah, very, very, very enjoyable. So I really hope you've enjoyed it, even a smidge as much as I have, because it's very good. It's a good noise. And I hope you've enjoyed watching the video. I hope you've enjoyed seeing this. I hope you've enjoyed this visit to the Talyllyn Railway. If you really like it and you want to know a bit more about the Talyllyn Railway, then the website is in the video description. And if you'd like to get involved, you'd like to become part of the team to be able to drive this, then the email for volunteering, that's in the video description as well. Normally at this point of the video, I like to bring attention to fundraisers or ways that you can help support the railway. And during the midst of this worldwide crisis that we have going on, the Talyllyn, for the first time in its peacetime history, has stopped operating. And it has caused great financial problems for the railway not to be open, not to be generating money. And for the first time in modern history, its very existence is threatened. There's a link in the video description which is to help support the railway with a donation, and now more than ever they would so appreciate your support. So let's help keep this amazing little railway going. And again, a super massive thank you to the Talyllyn Railway for inviting us up here to have a drive of Alf up and down the railway. We have had an amazing time. It has been absolutely superb, so thank you guys very, very much indeed. So guys, if you've enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, share this video with your railway friends or your non-railway friends, you know, spam them with railway stuff, that's always good. And of course, leave a comment, let us know what you think about this, what you think about the Talyllyn Railway. And if you've got a locomotive you'd like to appear on the channel, then please get in contact. Our contact details are on our website and the link to that is in the video description. So if you've enjoyed this guys, How about clicking up here for a bit more narrow gauge diesel action, or perhaps click down here for Ming, narrow gauge steam action on the Great Bush Railway. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you later. Oh God.